Thanks, Cian Corla. I think we all found it highly ironic that at a time when the country was, voting, when many of us were campaigning to put women at the centre of their own lives and their own healthcare in the 8th Amendment referendum, that at the same time the government was ensnared in a scandal where women's health and views were utterly diminished. It's now been confirmed in the report. Paternalism runs through and ran through women's health. Now, medical misogyny is a term that has been used, and doing medicine on the cheap is another term that I would use. Because, Minister, you gave the impression, you said that you were satisfied now with the quality management of the labs and that was confirmed by the report. But I think that isn't confirmed by the report. The central issue is actually, and I'll go into that now and what's said in the report, is the testing service that led to the errors in the first place, and it is not true that the labs were given a clean bill of health. I also want to mention the group that came up from Cork yesterday. Women's Lives Matter is the name of the group. They had a petition of 1,200 names. They wanted to meet you personally. I know that may not always be possible, but they were disappointed that they couldn't, having travelled up, but they did ask if you would meet them. They're women affected by this scandal as well, and I really think that you should agree, Minister, because their ultimate request is that this should be kept not outsourced but public in this country, where multidisciplinary teams can confer on issues, not in countries with a different time zone, and not for profit, that it will be done in the public health system and not outsourced. So just in relation to the central issues in the report, it's very frustrating actually, because 10 minutes is not enough for groups to discuss this. It really is. It's unfortunate, I mean, I've got a lot of points. I read the report and I can't make them. We should have had more time, Minister. This is the biggest issue, all over the last few months. I'm just going to have to cut myself off here, but I mean, there's important issues that do have to be trashed out. But I do want to mention, Vicky, Stephen, Emma, Lorraine, Ruth, and many others who are now household names for all of the wrong reasons. They never wanted to be, but they have made such a difference. I want to acknowledge that. But I want to take up the issue of the labs. In Chapter 6 of the report, the US-based labs question CPL. First of all, they never had the required international accreditation. That is what's said in the report. There was 2 levels of accreditation, and a lot of the labs didn't have the international standard. So that's the first point. CPL, which is owned by Sonic, examined 300,000 Irish samples. 1/3 of them were outsourced to other labs, and the tests ended up in Honolulu, Las Vegas, Victoria, San Antonio, and Cervical Check didn't even know that. And you're telling me that everything is hunky-dory in the labs? Also, Scally asks in the report, what was the nature, how many tests did they do, what was their compliance with quality and regulatory standards? And this is relevant today because Sonic is the mother company of MedLab, and they are right now proposing more outsourcing of Irish tests, and this time to Australia. In terms of quality assurance and the visits that were made, yes, it's true that Scally says that, for the tests in that particular country or region, they were up to standard, but they weren't up to international standard, and they all had different standards. CPL in 2011 were asked about their standards, and he says there's no record of what happened subsequently, when errors were identified. It was the underreporting of low-level cervical cancers, which is a very dangerous thing because they can then develop. They identified a consistent error by one pathologist who was training other people, and nothing ever happened. No consideration was made to the wider impact on the training of other staff. The other issue is the fiddling of figures by Quest. In 2014, there was 1,224 cases of false negatives. Again, I'm rushing here, but Quest were claiming a 3.19 rate of error, but actually it was 17.6%, according to Scally in the report. So using different labs in other countries with all different testing and definitions of abnormality. And the other thing is cost, Minister. Why is it that cost became increasingly a consideration for contracts being awarded? In In 2008, it was 20% of the criteria. By 2010, it was 35%, and by 2012, it was 40%. Because this country was in a bailout programme, things had to be cut, and cost became much more important. And you're telling me that that wouldn't impact on the testing of women. Now, in 2016, there's mini competitions, and 80% of the criteria is the cost. So this is, doing medicine on the cheap. Again, very little time, but Quest have generated profits of 7.7 billion, and just finishing, Count Corla, and Sonic had a net revenue of 3.5 billion. We should bring these testing under the public health system in this country, Minister. It is not fair or right to say that there's no issue arising from the report, and we definitely need further investigation of these issues.